You are listening to 600 Second Saga. Today's feature is The White Elephant by Hilary Fotino. The problem with working at the White Elephant is that you never really know what's going to come through the door. When that white elephant is on the seashore at the convergence of two ley lines, it gets worse. Or at least more exciting. Really depends on your outlook on life. I was the summer help that year, hired largely to deal with the sudden influx of tourists poking through the labyrinthine barn that was the store. Make sure they didn't get lost amid the knickknacks and statues, keep the fountain in the center running, cover the register if it looked like someone might actually want to buy that lobster trap they found under the pile of sea glass and clay pots. Things like that. Mostly, the store was run by my boss and her daughter Mel. It wasn't a serious job for them, but then they didn't need it to be. Not when her husband wore perfectly tailored suits and drove a car that I'd have to work the rest of my life to even consider affording. The front of the shop had two pillars holding up the overhang, dressed up to look like old Greek columns. The first time Mom dropped me off, she laughed and said it looked like I was working in a mausoleum. It was funny then, I suppose. It was a workday like any other. Mel was out for a bit to walk Spots, the Great Dane, and my boss was on the front steps watering the flowers. I was rearranging the collection of questionably acquired street signs. How the couple got in past her to end up in my sphere of responsibility, I will never know. But then I've also seen tourists this lost. The woman was sure they'd taken a wrong turn. The man laughed, somehow certain they were in the right place. If you need help with anything, just give me a shout. They didn't seem to hear me, their argument becoming less and less clear to understand. For a moment, I thought they'd switched languages. Finally, she hissed at him, baring her teeth, and he chittered back. I set down the stop sign I'd been working on positioning and turned, taking a step toward them, and I held up my hands defensively. "Excuse me, sir, ma'am, are you all right?" They both turned towards me, and I nearly fell backwards. Their faces were gone. He leaned in, chittering loudly at me. Before the scream could issue from my lips, my boss was there. Her hand was on my shoulder, her eyes on them. When she spoke, it wasn't that distant and distracted tone she normally had. "You're being rude." She wasn't speaking to me. "Are you here to appeal the decision of the judges?" Both of them nodded, and she sighed. "Fine, but I would say it's fairly clear that Asphodel is already calling you. If you wanted Elysium, maybe you should have lived your lives. Now get out of my store." They turned into shadows at her command and vanished through the cracks between the floorboards. I knew I must look like someone had just slapped me with a fish. That would have made more sense. Sorry about that. Sometimes people just don't like harsh truths. She pulled a cloth out of her pocket and held it to me. "Wipe your face. You've got some dirt. We've got a box coming in this afternoon. Can you take it?" Of course?" Her eyes focused on me again, pure and direct. "Very good. And don't worry, I'll teach you to deal with them properly when we've got time. You'll need to learn if you're going to be in my service." The problem with working in the White Elephant is that you never know what's going to come through the door. But with the Stygian iron in my pocket and the words in my mind, I know I can face just about anything. But that's what you get when you end up in service here. This was The White Elephant by Hilary Fotino. Hilary Fotino is a game designer that writes stories in her free time. You can find more of her stories at worldswoven.wordpress.com. Check our show notes for links. It updates 5 days a week. Music is provided by Mads. Learn more about 600 Second Saga, our authors, how to submit your flash fiction, and how to support the podcast in the show notes. This has been Mariah Avix and 600 Second Saga.